if you have not heard of the AI platform DeepSeek, you're going to hear about it right now. If you have heard about it, then you might know some of what we're talking about. But quite honestly, we think that we are very well versed on this topic, and so you're going to learn some new stuff from us. You better believe it.
And if you had heard about DeepSeek prior to 5 days ago, I'd be particularly interested because
you
almost
hadn't.
nobody had.
Because you hadn't.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, what is DeepSeek? It is an AI platform that is built by a Chinese company by the name of Highflyer. Highflyer is a hedge fund. And why did Highflyer go and build DeepSeek? The reason why they had been building internal AI processes for their investment platform, trying to find better ways to beat the market investing. And as part of that, they just had a natural interest in kind of the latest and greatest AI technology. And so they started building AI models a couple of years ago. The one that they released on January 20th is called DeepSeek R1. And the premise of this is that it competes directly with OpenAI's flagship OpenAI ChatGPT o1 product that came out, I want to say in like September or October. And so
now, ChatGPT's been around for 2 years.
Yeah, a little more than 2 years.
In its public-facing role, but this latest iteration of their large language model is, you said O1, right?
O1, and the big thing that O1 claimed to be able to do, and that it can do, is it can handle more logical reasoning things. So you ask it, logic-based questions, and it can actually kind of think through them in certain respects. And this platform, the DeepSeek R1 platform, does the exact same thing. So why does this matter? A couple reasons. The first is DeepSeek claims that they built this using about $5.6 million of what they call AI training, basically inputting all the data into the model and getting it to understand what it is.
Sounds like a lot of money, Chuck, is it?
No, because most AI models that are produced in the U.S. right now cost anywhere from about $500 million to $1 billion to do the training aspect.
Now, keep in mind, this is the training part where they're feeding it internet articles and the entire history of the New York Times and Facebook and Twitter and all these different things. This is just purely teaching the thing how to read and think and do everything that the AI models can do.
And basically, the training cost is a function of two things. How many computer chips do you need to train on, and how long do you need to do that for?
Got it.
Those are the two things that matter, because you're basically paying for the compute time. What you are then doing on the other end of that is after the training's completed, hey, you still need to pay for the processors to go and actually execute the queries that are asked of the model. So that's why if you're using OpenAI's enterprise platforms or their high-end stuff for O1, and again, these numbers are going to mean nothing to you, but don't worry about it. I'll make it make sense, I promise. If you need inputs from OpenAI, it costs $15 per million inputs. For outputs, it costs $60 per million. DeepSeek, remember, OpenAI is 15 per million inputs. DeepSeek is 14 cents per million inputs. 1% of the cost. On the other side of things, outputs, OpenAI is 60 per million outputs. DeepSeek is $2.19.
Okay. So we've basically now understood from this company's own, I wouldn't even say disclosures, but information that they've put out about themselves is that training and getting output out of this large language model costs
way
about
less.
1% on the training side and 3% of ChatGPT's own disclosed information on the output side of things. I would say, Chuck, that this is one area that we probably have the least degree of certainty about this new model.
Correct.
Right? Like it's a company held out of China, so could there be some accounting creativity, outright lies, whole bunch of subsidies from the Chinese government? All of those things are entirely possible. But what they are claiming is that, the cost to both run and train this thing were 1% to 3% of what we've been experiencing in models here in the United States, and we'll get to the results side.
So the training side of things is something where for this they trained on their cluster of computers for about 2 months. So what I can tell you is that there are a ton of AI startups and even like big AI companies like OpenAI or Microsoft. You better believe they're going to be having all hands on deck today saying, hey, can we do something similar Let's try to get it out in the next couple months. And so we're going to know in the next, probably, I would say by May or June, whether you can actually replicate the process for anywhere close to the cost that they've done. Because this is a cost thing. If you are a big, enterprise, or if you're any company that's considering using, AI technology, and someone comes and says, hey, I can give you like 99% of the performance for 1% of the cost, you're like, where do I sign up? Sign me up for it.
Now, for maybe the average person listening right now, especially if you're not paying for ChatGPT, this might not feel all that relevant to you.
Correct.
The enterprise,
but if you're not paying, they don't care because they're making no money off you.
If you want to go and subscribe right now, let's say you're a small business and you want to buy an enterprise license of ChatGPT and their latest models, I think you're looking at between $25 to $30 per month per user. And they're not really making any money on that per se. But just to give somebody a framework here for if you're actually paying for this thing, what does it cost? And that's where the pricing is coming in right now for like an enterprise version of ChatGPT.
That's not even really where the money is, though. It's really in, hey, like if you're someone who's paying in these million input tokens and things like that. Again, I'm using too much jargon and everything. The real money is, hey, I want to pay you just to send a bunch of data your way and have you send it back to me, not for the off-the-shelf license.
Right.
So, what we do know is a bunch of companies offer benchmarks for AI models. How quickly can you do this? Okay. How accurately can you do that?
So, give me 1,000 math equations, and how often do they get them right?
Yes, here is the LSAT for last year. What's your score, and how long does it take you to do it? Basically, except for computers. What we have here is on the 6 biggest benchmarks that are out there, this is basically within 1% to 2% of the O1 model.
That's ChatGPT's
O1
model that is kind of best in class right now.
Correct. And the other thing that's interesting about this, DeepSeek, they made it an open source model. So unlike ChatGPT where everything is held proprietary, like you can't see how the black box works, they published the code. They said, this is how it works. Here it is. And the fascinating thing, so a couple things that they do differently based on what the actual code shows and how it actually works. First, traditional AI models, generative AI to this point, I say traditional, they've been around for 2 freaking years. What's traditional about that? They work, each word is a different input. The, pause, cat, pause, saw, pause, the, pause, dog. OpenAI says, okay, we're going to read each of these in order to figure out what's going on. They figured out a way to do it in one whole chunk. The cat saw the dog. And in doing so, instead of having to query your database 5 times, you can do it once there. The other thing that they did is ChatGPT is an example. It's got like 680 billion parameters in it, basically inputs that are there where if you throw something at it, it runs through 680 billion things to figure out what to say back to you. DeepSeek built what's called an expert system, where if you ask a question about math, it says, okay, here are the terms we've categorized as math. We're going to pull from that subset, not from everything, because we don't need to access the whole database, and so it's more efficient.
I don't need to access 18th century poetry if I'm trying to answer a physics question.
Correct. Who cares about Dante if you want to know why E equals MC squared? He didn't know either. So ultimately, what this gets at is, while this is running in the cloud and you can pull up like the DeepSeek app on your phone, if you go and download the actual model, and like you got to do a little bit of work, you can't just like download this for a Windows computer and be fine. You can run this on a high-end gaming computer.
Okay, but what makes that special? Because that's confusing to me. Because I've got ChatGPT on my phone.
What makes it special is, right now, if you put something into ChatGPT or into the DeepSeek app, it goes to those servers and it gets stored on them, and it goes out to the company. They have what you are asking it. If you run it just on your computer, it doesn't go anywhere. It's private. It's held entirely internally, and you can see this because the code, it's not sending anything back to DeepSeek, home base and everything.
So let's say you work for a heavily regulated industry like the defense industry or the securities industry, where there are frequent questions asked about your cybersecurity, about what sort of tools you use, what the output is, where it gets stored. When you're using ChatGPT, there may be a whole bunch of restrictions because you can't define to your regulator or to your company, hey, this is how I know the information was processed, this is where it's stored, and I have certainty that ChatGPT won't get hacked and my data won't go anywhere.
Sure.
You don't need... Otherwise, you have to build this whole thing in your own mainframe and store it at Raytheon, for example.
And you can't do that because you don't you're not going to spend like $10 billion doing that. It doesn't make sense for you to. This you can run on a high-end gaming computer. You could spend 10 grand on it, and you can run it internally. Now, the DoD probably still going to be like, don't use DeepSeek because it still is a Chinese, developed.
Right.
So
let's talk about the technology here.
Yes.
And the technology seems to be that I have a model that can be run with a fraction of the computing costs, and therefore no need to have this massive processing power.
And it can, by the way. There are people out there that have done this in the last week and are like, oh, bleep, this changes everything. And these are like smart people that actually know what they're talking about, unlike me, who's repeating what I've read from smart people. So, why does this actually matter? Quick break, we'll fill you in when we return. All right, so during the first segment, we were talking about DeepSeek, which is an AI platform that just released its most recent iteration about a week ago and posted some really impressive results and claiming to do so at very minimal cost. Why does this matter, and why are tech stocks getting bludgeoned today? That's right, bludgeoned.
Yep.
The answer is this. The entire AI industry in the United States is based on one idea and one idea alone. If we build more powerful computers, we will get better models, and it's willing to pay exponentially more in order to do so. Meaning, hey, in order to get a model that's like 10% better right now, you need to spend 50% more.
So, for example, a company like NVIDIA has benefited greatly from the fact that people want to build out the latest and greatest models, and until today, believe that they need the latest and greatest chips in order to do so.
Satya Nadella at Microsoft says, hey, you know what? I got to increase my AI capex from $55 billion to $80 billion this year in order to do so. Now, if it gets proven, hey, you don't need to do this, and there is a different path to building capable, powerful AI, which, again, I'm going to say the jury is still out on, simply because
this is like day zero.
What we have right now is the product that is legit. Whether the cost side is legit is one that we don't know yet,
100%.
Just because when it comes to the actual pricing and cost of an AI platform built out of China, you just have to look at it and say, am I really seeing everything?
It's a black box. You don't know.
But here's why the entire, basically, AI ecosystem is being hit today. And by AI ecosystem, I don't just mean NVIDIA. If you look at this, it's NVIDIA, Microsoft, Broadcom, who makes basically a whole bunch of like memory and other stuff that goes in there. Oracle, who is going to build out the Stargate platform. Amazon, Google. Utility stocks, okay? You got utility stocks getting absolutely crushed today.
Why utility stocks, Chuck?
Well, if you don't need to build giant or denner centers, I do like the word gianter. I'm going to start using that. If you don't need to build giant or data centers,
nuclear power plants to power them,
then Constellation Energy doesn't need to turn 3 Mile Island back on, and so Constellation is down 19% today. This is the entire ecosystem that is getting absolutely whacked as a result of this. So I think my view here is, look, I've wondered for a while, hey, is this AI boom just a CapEx boom in a different wrapper? Is it going to have the same features? And the answer today is now, for the first time in the last 2 years, the answer is maybe instead of yes. And so that's what's being priced in today, is kind of the first iteration of maybe. If over the next 4 to 6 months, we have other companies in other parts of the world, the US, Europe, wherever, that come out and say, yeah, we've been able to do something similar.
It flips everything on its head.
Then I got to tell you, the entire data center build-out model, poof.
All that stuff we've been talking about needing to modernize and revolutionize America's electricity generation. How, I was quite optimistic that, hey, this might result in higher prices for electricity in the short term, but long term you can have massive capacity built out and all these other features. Gone.
Now,
that's
other things
no longer relevant if this is true.
Other things to pay attention to. Back in 2014 through 2016, Russia decided, hey, we don't want U.S. fracking companies making a whole bunch of money selling oil at $90 a barrel. So what did Russia do? They said, hey, we're going to turn on the spigots and just throw all the oil at the problem. Oil prices went to 30. A bunch of U.S. frackers went out of business, and Russia said, haha, gotcha. One question that I do have on this, again, the cost piece is the one that really matters. Is China just throwing a bunch of money away saying, look, we'll lose money on AI forever? Like, we don't care if we make money on this, but we're going to try to torpedo U.S. AI development through this. Very much a possibility. And if that's the case, then I think very quickly this is going to become apparent, and it'll be, okay, fine, we're just not going to pay for, that model. And here's the really interesting thing. Remember, the way that most people access DeepSeek is not through setting up their own, servers running it, but
they
through
download it in the App Store.
Mike, is there a law on the books about national security as it relates to Chinese-based phone apps?
Have you ever heard of the application TikTok?
I have.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder, does the U.S. at some point try to ban DeepSeek? One of the first things that came.
Why wouldn't you? It follows most of the same framework, right? Do you have the ability to influence Americans' opinions on large subjects? Do you have the ability to track information that gets downloaded onto your phone when you use the DeepSeek app? All of these same things that we were concerned about with TikTok would apply to DeepSeek, hypothetically.
100%. And so is it only a matter of time before DeepSeek gets banned? The question that remains then, if it does, what does that do to AI development in the U.S.? Do you still see the bigger is better framework for how we have to develop? Or do people still try to replicate what DeepSeek has done here? I mean, even without DeepSeek existing in the U.S., there are real questions on this. So ultimately, things that I think we can take away from this, because we still don't know a ton. First person through the wall, not always the winner. Number two, in the tech industry generally, hardware tends to get commoditized over time. That might be the case here. And the third one, remember, China hasn't been able to buy legally a lot of these chips for a while. Scarcity might force innovation. We still don't know because we don't really know how they developed it, but we'll see.